We will now start the personal consumer health unit. We're going to begin today talking about decision making. The leading cause of death in the United States can be prevented to a large extent by improving personal health choices, which is going to include decision making. These personal choices require an individual to go through a decision making process throughout the day. Before a high school student arrives at school each day, he or she has intentionally or inadvertently made dozens of decisions. Examples of these are whether or not to take a shower, eat breakfast, ride the bus, drive themselves or ride with a friend, whether or not to wear a seatbelt or drive safely. Responsible decision making is crucial to living a healthy lifestyle, and it does require skill as well as practice. Some decisions, which are made more automatic, like brushing one's teeth, is a good example. One rarely thinks about doing it, it is just part of your morning routine. With other decisions, a conscious thought process is followed. When a health decision requires critical thinking, the steps may include. So listed below is what we consider our decision-making model. Number one is you first have to identify the decision that has to be made. The example I like to most commonly use, we can talk about skin cancer. So the first thing is I've got to decide whether or not I'm going to try to prevent myself from getting skin cancer, which is number one, identify the decision. Number two, gather relevant information from reliable sources. So if I wanted to learn more information about skin cancer, where would I go? And the answer is simply not Google. Although Google can be a great resource, we need to make sure that what we are researching is coming from reliable sources, which is usually .gov or .org websites if we're using an online platform. Other options would be teachers, doctors, parents who may have a knowledge, or other trusted adults who may have a knowledge of the subject matter, textbooks, and once again, doctors or anybody in the medical field about this. So number one, once again, would be identify the decision that has to be made, which is whether or not I'm going to try to prevent myself from getting skin cancer. Number two is I'm going to find relevant information to that that comes from reliable sources. So I'm going to start online and I'm going to find .gov and .org websites that have information on skin cancer. Number three, we're going to list the possible choices. So some of the choices are going to be, and this is for anything, either good or bad choices. Most of our models that we're going to do here in class, you're going to have to come up with three. So three examples would be, number one, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to decide that I'm going to roll the dice and I'm not going to do anything or go out of my way to try to protect myself from getting skin cancer. Another choice would be to wear sunscreen anytime I'm outside. The last choice I'm going to use is I'm going to wear UV protective clothing such as bucket hats or lightweight long sleeve shirts during the summer when I'm outside. Once I have established the possible choices, which is number three, I'm then going to come up with a list of negative and positive choices, or consequences from each of those choices. So obviously for not doing anything about skin cancer, a negative choice would be getting skin cancer, or negative consequence. A positive consequence would be the prevention of getting skin cancer. Also negative for not doing anything would be something along the lines of maybe it costs money for sunscreen, or it costs money for other things, whereas if I don't do anything, it's free. And you would do this down the list. So I'd come up with positive and negative outcomes for each one of the choices that I'm going to make. Number five, you have to determine who could possibly be affected by your choice. A lot of times we don't put in perspective that other people are going to be influenced by the decisions that I make. For example, if I were to get skin cancer, my wife would be affected financially and emotionally, as well as my parents and my other friends and loved ones. So I need to take that in consideration when choosing what I will do. Number six, determine who is influencing my choices. This one generally always is going to start with your peer group or your friends. Also, the media may play an influence on, or have an influence on what you're doing. My parents, my family are also usually common answers there. Number seven, decide which choices have the most positive and least negative outcomes. So to me, obviously, it would be a combination of a couple of my choices. One, I'm going to use sunscreen as much as possible. And 2, I'm going to use UV protective clothing as much as possible. 7 is we're going to decide which choices, excuse me, number 8, we're going to act upon a choice. So I'm going to choose what choice I'm really going to make, and the 2 I'm going to choose are, once again, I'm going to wear sunscreen and UV protective clothing. And number 9, I'm going to evaluate my decision, which means I'm going to reflect on whether or not it is working and how it has benefited my overall health. So down below, if we click here, we're going to have a model of the decision-making process, and it's really just what we went over, just in the spread or worksheet form. Here is what the chart will work out. Now, this is what we're going to do as far as a worksheet goes. So number 1, identify the choice that would be made. Number 1 is where I would write whether or not I want to get skin cancer or try to protect myself from skin cancer. Number 2 is where I'm going to list relevant information. So I'm going to write down the .com, or excuse me, the .gov/.org websites, doctors, maybe teachers, or textbooks. Part 3 is where I'm going to write down my 3 choices. Remember, I said choice A would be not to do anything. Choice B, I'm going to decide to wear sunscreen. And choice C, I'm going to use UV protective clothing. Down here for 4, I'm going to write a positive and negative outcome for each. So if this one here was not do anything, positive is it is free. I don't have to spend any money. A negative would be increased risk of getting skin cancer. For this one, if this is sunscreen, a positive outcome would be it reduces my chances of getting skin cancer, while negative could be I don't like the smell of sunscreen, or maybe the feel of it on my skin, or the fact that it would cost money. Number 5 is who might be affected by my choices. As I said earlier, most directly would probably be my wife, followed by my friends and family. Number 6, who influences my choices? Definitely my peer group that I spend time with, especially outdoors. My family, my wife, and my friends. Act upon my choice. Here, I'm simply just going to write choice A, B, or C, or B or C, or a combination of all of them. So here, I'm going to write choice B and C, which was wear skin cancer or sunscreen and UV protective clothing. And number 8, I'm going to write a couple sentences about why I chose that and why I think that is going to work to my benefit. Here you see an example for smoking. And we, for this one, chose to smoke cigarettes. That is the decision we're going to make for our overall health. Once again, you can see relevant sources, textbooks, doctors, websites that are .gov or .org. And then down here, we see 3 different choices or decisions that we're going to have to make, followed by positive and negative outcomes for each. Further down to 5 or 6, we see who might be affected by my choices and also who is influencing those choices. Number 7, we're going to make a decision, which looks to be here, choice C. And number 8, we're going to write a sentence or 2 about why we decided to make that choice. Here we're just going to see a suggestion of health risks that you guys may or may not have to make decisions about. That will be a great example of when you'll have to go through the decision-making model. That's pretty much going to wrap it up for 9.PCH.1.1. Make sure that you refer to all the resources that are provided here below for your worksheet that's going to follow tomorrow. The only thing you don't need to use the examples that we used today was for smoking and skin cancer, but you may use anything else for that. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up. If you have any questions, guys, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email or meet with me in Zoom about that. Have a great day.